Hi and welcome. This is Archana here with Divine Soul Resonance, welcoming everyone to my channel with all my love and all my heart. Today I'm interviewing someone on spiritual awakening. We have so many people ask questions on they're seeing numbers, they're seeing signs, and they're feeling something, but truly I wanted to bring forth someone on our channel who has had a deep or many deep awakenings, and I'm going to allow for him to share that. And I'd like to begin and introduce to you Christopher Joy right here. He's here. I've had the pleasure to meet with him, talk with him, and really get to know parts of his journey. And I'd like to bring that forth here and just see, as it has helped me to grow, to understand more about all of it, what is it, and perhaps it can inspire and guide another and bring healing, for it has brought healing in my life. So let me introduce you to Christopher Joy here. So Christopher, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? And I'd like to then ask for the audience, what has your spiritual awakening been?
Well, I was raised in a fundamental Christian family. I guess I could say that the first deep experience was when I was a little boy. I was just blindly believing that God existed because I was told that that was the case, and I was just like, oh, well, of course, that must be true. But I had never had any actual first-person experience with it. I was about 10 years old, and I was just worshiping God. Just kind of childlike innocence. And I started to feel goosebumps that were growing more and more intense, to where it felt like a warm wind was touching me. And so I started to move towards that, like physically, just curious. I ended up moving across the room, up to the front of the room, and it was getting more and more and more and more intense, until just like an explosion. It just felt like the most insane amount of raw energy blasted up from the inside of my body, from the soles of my feet upwards. And it felt like liquid electricity up through my whole body, which felt hollow, out the top of my head, while at the exact same time, like a lightning bolt that felt like electric fire blasted down through the top of my head, all the way through my whole body, out my feet, like going opposite directions. And it was just absolute sheer ecstasy, in multiplying on itself. And then it just all experience of the world, of thought, of just was gone. And there was just this infinite ocean of energy, like this sun that is all that exists, that's everything. And I'm that, but there's no I, there's no concept of a person, just. And then I have no idea how long that lasted. The next thing I know, I'm opening my eyes and I'm on my back. I'm well across the room from where my last memory was. And I'm just weeping, overwhelmed with the intensity and joy of it, and had no idea what had happened.
How old were you?
About 10. Yeah.
So at 10, to have that kind of an experience, how do you relate to that in the world?
I didn't. It created this extreme desire to go back there, to get that back. And so I very quickly fell into drugs, alcohol, all manner of that sort of thing, and was just an absolute villain for the majority of my adult life. It reached an extremity, and I had tried, going the fundamental religious route for myself, like go to church, and it just wasn't. It's like, no, where is God? Where is that actuality that I experienced that happened? And everything else is just hollow. So it just extreme anxiety, extreme depression, just built, and all manner of drugs were used to try to cope with that. And the fast forward version is that after about 18 years of it, I just reached a maximum critical mass of misery, suicidal, and there was a certainty of God, of consciousness, of whatever label that you wish. And so I just began seeking that in earnest, to the exclusion of all else. And it culminated to where I was sobbing myself into exhaustion. I was just busted. I felt I'm hopeless. I'm doomed. I can't get out of this trap. I'm horrifically addicted to these drugs. I have all these things that I thought that I wanted that would make me happy. I had, money without having to work, and drugs every day, and this woman that I thought that would make me happy, and a house and all the toys that I wanted. And I was even more miserable. And so I shut myself up in my room, and I would just cry out. Like as hard as a human being can sob, until I was exhausted and hoarse, and then I would go silent, and I would start just sitting in stillness. And that went on for quite some time. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting there in stillness, and the mind bubbles up, who am I? And then the mind answers, I'm me. And as best as can be said, it was like that was seen through. And it was like, oh my, it's so difficult to explain. Like consciousness is looking at this mind to say, I am me. I am the individual. I am a person that's separate. And there was like space. Whereas before it felt like, if I say I am me, I feel that. I feel that is real. I feel that is the truth. That thought, that feeling. But then, with the way this happened, that was not the case. Those thoughts, that feeling, it was seen with distance as, oh my gosh, that's just mind. And then it just dissolved away. And there was just a blown out, consciousness is everything experience. I looked at my phone at this point, and I was seeing how late it was in the day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to take my dose of drugs. I'm going to be sick. It was a thought that bubbled up. And I realized, then I saw the day, and my mind was blown. It was 5 days later, and I had no accounting for it. I hadn't done any drugs in 5 days, and I wasn't sick. And from that point forward, opiate addiction and to all other kind of drugs just dissolved away.
A question for you. During that time, when you were a boy and you moved to find that space again through drugs, etc., how was the family support? How were they integrating or understanding or helping you during that process?
As best they could.
When you explained to them when you were little, when you had that experience, how did your family react to that?
That you had an experience with God, but that just I could not explain. I still cannot correctly explain.
So because many times when we are on this path of awakening, there is that distancing that we feel from a life that we had or the life that we are undergoing. It just becomes like such a stark contrast. Nothing just seems to make sense, or wanting to be alone, or fear of, sometimes I've read that there is this loss of fear of death.
Correct, because the thing that is afraid of dying is mind. Just a thought. It's an imagination. Every single word that I am saying is imagination. Someone decided that the word hello would mean something. Somebody invented that. Imagined that up. And so when that person, ego, is submerged, goes away, vanishes.
Can it really vanish?
Well, that's what you're speaking of, permanent enlightenment, is when there is no ego anymore and thoughts stop. There's very few that I am aware of that are there at that point. But here, it was like ego, sensation of individuality, was just gone. And for an extended period, it was simply God is all that exists. Consciousness is all that exists. There's nothing else that exists to be afraid of. And then, after a time, a little bit of that, an ego structure, a person, a sensation of individuality, sort of reformed, but much less than it was, without a host of fears and depressions and anxieties. It heals. And so then there was a dark night of the soul, because to go from that space of unfettered, open, there's not even fearless. There's not fear, there's not fearless. There's just... And to go from that to feeling like an individual, separate person again, here, I can say, was shocking, jarring, traumatic. And it led to I sunk into a dark night of the soul where it's like grasping for that again. The same thing I did when I was a kid. I need to get that back. I need to get back there. And it was only somewhat recently that that grasping stopped. And so, from here, spiritual awakening, the core, the root, the essence of the point of the term is entirely to do with identity. It's not to do with fancy experiences. It's not to do with having wonderful visions, and there's been all manner of heaven made real here, multiple occasions. Hell made real here. Those are all just experiences. They're all just window dressing. And it's what the core of it is the identity. What do you feel as yourself? And when what is felt as self is not chained to a ego, to a imagining, to a individual person, and it instead is with everything, beyond words, truly beyond words. Every thought, and just speaking here now, currently every thought, every feeling, every sense, sight, sound, and touch, every bit of that is seen as imagination, as awareness, as consciousness, as God looking at imagination. And so in the same way where there was distance from this thought that was saying, I am me, and the massive change that caused is now broader. Instead of there being just distance from that thought of I am this individual, I am me, there's distance from everything. And the best it can be described as anything that changes is imagination. The truth, with the capital T, is not able to be spoken of. The truth never changes, or it's not the truth. And so that which never changes is that which is looking at all of this that is changing, including thoughts, including form, including feeling. And so the experience here is impossible to put to words, but we'll try anyway.
What we'll do is, for that part, I'd like to invite you over for another session where you can talk a little bit more in depth, where we can dedicate one whole session on the thoughts and what's looking at awareness, because that's the way you have helped me to see past a lot of the limitations. I really had another question while you were speaking. It was coming to me is, during this part, did you ever feel a need to reach out to a guru? We all say, okay, I need someone. So
it's part of Yes.
It would be nice if you shared a little bit on.
I like this saying.
So hold on. You know why I'm asking this is because many times people are asking on my channels on so many things on what do we do when this happens? What happens at this time? So I'm trying to.
But speaking specifically to your question regarding guru,
yes.
First of all, 99% that would wear that label, it's not it. Guru is someone who is done, as in there's no thoughts. And a person, an individual, an ego, tries to imagine that and they just think of deep sleep. Well, how can you function without thoughts? How can you? It's beyond concept. It's beyond ability to articulate or think or feel. Thoughts stop. So does that mean they sit there silent? No. Just in the moment, speech will happen as it needs to be in that moment. And so when you are I like the saying that if you truly need a true guru, one will appear. And that is exactly how it was worked out here. And it is, it's sort of like being let out of a dream into being awake. Yet, with awakening, the dream still continues on after you awake. Like all of this the sensation here is that it's a dream, it's imagination. It still goes on even after awakening. It's just that now the identification is with what is looking at this, all of this. Feelings, thoughts. And so here, thoughts still arise in a much smaller number than before. They still arise, but they're seen through. Like noise in a can. Like if you heard a radio say, I am me, you wouldn't think that that's you just because it's saying I am me. Similarly, with the thought, the feeling, I am me, I'm this person, comes up, it's just seen as noise. It doesn't have the sticking power that it used to. And so that's what I mean, about identity. It's about identity. Who are you? And asking that question is not to arrive at an answer with thought and word. asking that question to the conclusion dissolves the questioner. It is very difficult to speak of and really impossible. You're literally trying to speak of something that is beyond words and concept with words and concepts.
However, given that that is the way we humans communicate, we need to have words and symbols. I mean, otherwise, how would we know what is this color?
Well, that
color,
is important,
right?
to function in this.
So even though we can say that they're not certain labels, and I know we don't like labels, and you specifically don't like to put any sort of a label on anything. However, for a simplicity, for understanding, per se, for communication on these words that we have placed, it's kind of required to, even though it can never...
I just want to throw the caveat out there that you can memorize every scripture and every bit of wisdom, and the mind will think that it knows what the truth is. No, it does not. Every bit of truth, every bit of scripture, every bit of wisdom ever spoken is doing its best to point to the invisible truth, to the silent, invisible truth. And the silent, invisible truth is not words. You're pointing at it going, it's right here. However, beneath the words, there is a certain energetic happening that seems to occur. And
yes, there's energy behind the words. There's energy with who's speaking, how it's coming forth. And that's what gets transmitted, not just the words itself.
In fact, all of these words and every word ever written is just for the mind. But depending who's speaking them,
yes.
If someone is saying, two people can say the exact same thing. One of them learned of this concept, and they're speaking of what they've learned. The other one is trying to use words to speak from the experience that is real. There's a much different energy. Mm-hmm. And that is where I say that, a lot of gurus that are a lot of spiritual teachers, gurus, whatever, of any religion, most of them they're teachers. I don't want to say just teachers because it's important. There is value in it.
Thank you. It's needed.
But what I mean is, if you can speak from a place of deep, first-hand, lived experience, there's a energy current, so to speak, that goes along with it that is not present when someone has just learned of it and is telling you what they have learned.
And that's why I brought you here on the channel, and you're the first one that I brought here. Even though this is not like a professional type of a setting, or, but this was meant to be. I mean, wanting to have you speak to the people who ask me the questions, and I know many times I come from certain parts of direct experience, but a lot of it is also learned experience, like he said. He didn't say that about me, but I'm saying that. So I wanted to bring on my channel someone who's had a direct experience and is still undergoing through it, is still, going through many of these changes. And I wanted to bring forth, I think, experiences, and that brings in a certain energy for us. That's been the intention. I wanted to also ask Christopher, with all of this now, and it's not like, oh, this is done and quote unquote, sometimes when I say now that you're awakened, and you correct me like, oh, this is, I'm not an end and a finished product. So for me, the question to you, the final question here for this segment is, then where to would you I wouldn't even have a question like, where to is the only question that I have. Like, what do you want to not do? How do you want to share? What is some vision, some insight, some... I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to let you feel that
say
question
that
out.
The mind fears what it doesn't know.
Yes.
And the ultimate unknown is death. The ultimate unknown is, what is it beyond concept that I am literally incapable of as a mind, as a person, of comprehending, contemplating, touching. That is seen as oblivion. That's why it's, when you think of, try to imagine no thought, no feeling. Like, that's not you. Try to imagine no thoughts coming in the head and just speech coming out. It sounds like, oh my God, you're just a robot. No. It's that which is, that God, consciousness, awareness, the self with a capital S. That is being experienced as itself. And the body and all the things laid out for it continue to go on. And some might sit in a cave at that point. Some might continue on with family life and business. Some might teach. Some might just be completely, you would never ever know them if you saw them or met them. You would never suspect. And so, as best as can be said from here, is that it's beyond concept, beyond imagining. But what seems to be the case is that there is this seeing, this awareness that is looking at everything, every thought, every feeling, from a center here, every sensation, is looking at this, seeing it clearly as an imagination. It's not a bad thing. It just is. And that, however, awareness that is aware of these things is not pure awareness. And so I'll share something the one that I know that is more advanced than me, or finished, or whatever terminology that comes closest to the truth, has said, is that awareness, aware only of awareness, is endpoint.
That went too fast. Can you repeat that part?
Awareness that is aware only of awareness is endpoint. There's nothing beyond awareness. There's nothing beyond God. There's nothing beyond that. That is the beyond, and everything that seems like it's not. When God is aware of God's own self and sees only God's own self and is only God's own self, endpoint. There does not need to be any thoughts for that to happen. It's not like anything that can be imagined. And everything I've said is, wrong. As in, I'm just dancing around us, in a circle, pointing towards this center. The words can't capture it, but they can kind of direct your attention in a certain way.
So, Christopher, we're going to take this slow, because for many of us, and I put myself in that category, to completely come from the point of no thoughts and no feelings. And,
I'm not saying. There's still it's still a body that feels. It's just that it does not operate off of thought.
To be in a state of operating not out of thoughts.
To be entirely submersed and anchored into God or consciousness.
Yes.
And that operates.
So that is complete embodiment of the spiritual energy and
say,
surrendering.
You could say that.
Something to that.
Well, there's no more surrendering because that which was surrendering is dead and gone now.
Okay. I still do the okay.
The ego perceives it as I'm surrendering, and I'm doing it because I'm liking it. And I'm getting all of these shiny experiences, and my misery is reducing and reducing and reducing. Well, that's the cookie that leads the ego along to its eventual demise, if the end goal is reached. It's terrifying for the ego to think about it non-existing. It perceives that as just black and everything is over, but it's not how it is. It's sort of like the ego, if the ego is gone away, either even temporarily, even just for 30 seconds, it is mine, but it's just, existence didn't end? Wait, but I'm not here. Wait, but that wasn't me. Wait, but does not compute.
So,
blown out consciousness.
So for all of us, for many of us, okay, for those who have not had these huge experiences as such, let me put it this way, that's all I can say.
Well,
I'm not justifying, I'm not using the right words for your experience, allow for that.
Well, neither am I, but I'm doing the best I can.
Okay, good, then I'm doing the best that I can. So what I'm coming at is that as you've worked with me, you know that I look for, okay, what is the next step? What can I do next? So that we can take steps closer to it. Like you said, it's just not easy to say, oh, what? Ego death?
First of all, I'll say that there is no cookie cutter teaching or advice that will fit everyone.
But there's still one
However,
or two steps.
You can, it just depends on where the person is at. And things as simple as increasing beauty in your life, all manner of things, looking inward, meditating, self-inquiry. There's just a million different angles on this. I mean, there's people that have a very, very long, slow, somewhat easy, no extremes, and it just progresses, and then bang, one and done. It is, I mean, you can look at all of these sages and saints, and avatars and what have you, and they all have different paths that led them seemingly to that experience. But really, at this point, I don't have any broad blanket thing what I can say. It's much easier to speak to a person individually, or a group of people at the quote-unquote same level.
I'm sorry. That just came out. Same level again is now. We won't get into a debate here. Same level would imply that there is someone,
maturity or advancement. Of course, every single word that is being said is being heard and processed by an ego.
So let me rephrase
So you're talking to the mind.
So I'll rephrase myself in saying that we're looking at, let's say, there are a group of people who like art history. So everybody enrolled in art history would get some sort of a, you would be able to speak to that particular group. I mean,
no, that's not what I meant at all.
Okay.
No, I meant that I was speaking to spiritual ripeness, spiritual development.
Okay.
And that is not always readily apparent. That does not equal how many years you've meditated or how long you've gone to church or
that I agree. That I agree.
It's
100%.
It can be that someone who is to the naked eye extremely, you're way down here and you're an addict, you're depressed, you're not functioning well in society, and so boy, you need to fix all of that and you'll be more advanced.
I'm getting a lot more questions, and I'm really liking this part. I'd like to elaborate on that. As to perceptions, as who we see is awakened or looks awakened, is spiritually quote unquote awake or on that path, and how our perception really clouds a lot of what is really beneath it, and we fail to see that. I'd like to actually talk about it perhaps in the next time. Would you be willing to come on board again.
Yes.
And share, because I also wanted to ask and bring forth for the audience like some of the things that you brought in healing, and perhaps through your own personal journey and how you've helped people around you where you work, and well, myself included, on deeper emotional patterns, or pointing towards the truth. I'd like to bring that forth for all of you.
Well, every single bit of suffering is the result of identifying with and entirely believing something that's not the truth.
And I think that was a beautiful sessions that we've had on that.
Fear of death exists because there is such a believed certainty that I am this individual, and I was born, and I'm going to die, and oh my God, what's going to happen then? That's a extremely difficult belief to shed. But something even as simple as, I'm worthless, I'm worthless. I mean, these beliefs, the mind might deny that it believes something, but you're still feeling the result of it, of a very deep thing that your heart is believing. Your heart has swallowed. And there's zero defense against it. It's just like, this is just a programmable system, so to speak. Racist families can raise a racist kid effortlessly. The kid has no defense against it. They're told all this racist stuff, and they just embrace it. And then as they grow in life, they may have a chance to bust out of that paradigm that they've been conditioned with.
I think that's a very big topic, and we should consider doing a complete separate episode on that. I really do think that it's important on the beliefs, because that will lead to the next part on the steps. And
so long as you believe something that is not the truth, the truth will be blocked from you, from your ability to. You're just I'm believing this, and I'm believing that, and I'm believing that, and you're not necessarily saying it so with your mind, but your feelings betray you, how you react to certain thing. And if someone puts a gun to your head, you're going to, no matter how much you say you're not afraid to die.
Actually, that has actually come up in my mind as I was doing self-inquiry on something that took place recently. And the conclusion was, because I kept asking, why am I afraid of this? Why? What's at the core? What is it, Archana? What is it, Archana?
As you start to unravel these beliefs, you start at the most painful ones.
It came down to fear of death. And I couldn't believe that I was saying this. You're afraid of death, Archana? Why? So talk for another time, because that was a very recent...
Well, that's an example of the mind can think it knows something. It can think it knows that I'm going to die and I'm going to go to heaven.
No.
And it thinks it knows that. Yeah. The mind that thinks it knows that. But yet, in the heat of the moment, it's afraid of death. Because it doesn't really know.
Yeah, I will definitely touch upon that, because I had that experience. And when I came to the core, I almost felt and more feelings and more parts to work with and integrate in my own self was I was ashamed that I move around like I'm so fearless and I'm not afraid of all of this, and I can do this and I can do this. And so the ego has been built up so nicely and strongly that I look in the mirror and I said, what? This is an afraid girl inside? Afraid of these things. And it just being afraid of death made me feel shameful. Like, what? Made me feel like I'm being deceptive. And anyway, we won't do a session right now. But I think it gives us all a good chance to kind of, even if we can catch on to something, and if there's something that's come through from here, there was no planning on this. It was just meant to be. Christopher, I'd like to bring you on the channel, introduce you to the people, and no agenda, no questions as such, and we're just going to kind of roll with it. And I thank you for being here. I thank you for sharing your light with all of us. And I look forward to more sessions and bringing it a little more awareness for the people. So I thank you and I appreciate you. Thank you all for joining us, and I'll be looking forward to bringing more episodes for all of us. Thank you.